martial arts for 30 years now. And my first art was American boxing. And I transitioned from American boxing to your traditional jiu-jitsu, from traditional jiu-jitsu to Brazilian jiu-jitsu and judo, and then mixed martial arts. And I have three black belts. I have one in your traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu, one in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and one in judo. And all of my belts I received from prestigious instructors. My judo black belt I received from 2004 Olympian Dr. Roddy Ferguson. My traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu black belt I received from one of the high members of the Sanukas family of Dr. Moses Powell. And my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt I received directly from Jacare Cavalcante, uh, Romero Cavalcante. If you don't know who that is the founder of Alliance Jiu-Jitsu. So all of my belts, all of them was earned. None of them was just given to me. I had to work hard to receive all of those belts.
Well,
So
let me
that's just a
ask.
little bit of. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no. I wanted to ask you why specifically BJJ. Out of all the martial arts you could have went into, Taekwondo, you did mention judo, Aikido. I mean, there's so many Muay Thai. Why specifically Brazilian Jiu Jitsu? What was it about it that just lured you in?
I think the I wasn't a big fan of katas, even as a kid. Like I think I visited a karate school or a taekwondo school, and the first this was old school, so you would visit the school,
Yeah,
and they would let you come in and spar like
yeah,
right off the street,
yeah.
And I had no background experience or anything as a kid. I went in and I was able to spar with one of the instructor's top students, not knowing anything, just street fight, right? And I held my own. Not only did I hold my own, I pretty much I roughed the kid up. But the instructor pulled me to the side and he said, "Well, it's great and everything, but just to let you know, in order to go up in rank here, you have to learn katas." And I was like, "Katas, what is that?" He was telling me what the katas is. And he's like, "Yeah, you have to know a series of
Yeah.
katas, like at least about maybe 12 or 15 katas before you can get your black belt." And I was like, "Man, I just beat one of your top students and I don't know anything. And you telling me I got to learn katas before I can get my black belt." So that was as a kid. And I was like, "Nah, I'm not interested. I got to do that." Right. So with the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, it's really the katas is in the form of the technique, in the reps. So you see a lot of lot of drilling technique. That is katas in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So that's what drew me into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Let's talk about the color barrier in martial arts. Um, I came up. I went to karate, katas all day. I would travel national tournaments and stuff. So that was like the standard for most schools. Like you had to learn the katas. You
Right.
go into the kumites, whatever the case may be. But yeah, to move up, you had to. Do you not see any value in katas the way they did it, as opposed to how you see it now? Or I guess I'm asking, did you have the right mindset back then? Had you been a little bit more willing to and open to the kata system, or you were just like, you know what, this ain't the path for me. Period.
Right. I think the katas for me, right, is once I got older,
Okay.
I understood it better. And I think it was more applicable for older because with the katas, it teaches you breathing properly, proper stance. And so you got to have a somewhat of a mature mindset, to really get all of the benefit of a kata, of the practice of katas,
Mhm.
right? And to just introduce that to a child, they don't really understand. They say, "Okay, I'm going to learn this because I need this in order to progress and go forward." But I think that as an adult, you have a greater appreciation for katas in martial arts now. Like you have Wing Chun,
Yeah.
right? That's all katas, is slow moving katas, but it's so wonderful for the body. It helps with your breathing, your flexibility. So many benefits that comes from learning certain katas and stuff. But I didn't understand that as a youth. I couldn't get it. I wanted the action. You know, so I definitely have a greater appreciation for it now as an older adult. Yes.
Okay, so the color barrier in martial arts, for me, I didn't see a lot of us, and if I did, it was like, oh my god, there's one of us, there's two of us. Um, what was your experience in early, early in your martial arts journey? Was there? Tell me the time when you saw the kind of doors kind of open up for everybody and be more accepting, especially for us.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you because everybody, they want, oh, jujitsu is a welcoming place. It is. Jujitsu and the gym or the dojo that you go to, it should be a welcoming place for everyone. But once you get inside, you start to see little what they call it, microaggressions.
Okay.
All right. You start to see little things like, wait a minute, like example, I think I was uh, maybe a blue belt, right? And when I was training in the early days of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And I noticed that it was just a handful of us, African Americans there. And I noticed that, man, we're all on the same team, but we had teammates coaching other teammates against each other,
Yeah.
you know. And it just seemed like it was more, all of the black guys didn't receive any, that much coaching, not from their teammates, okay? But it was like teammates would bunch up together and coach other teammates that was non-African American against the African Americans. So it did two things. It made the African Americans bond closer together,
Okay.
and work closer together in order for us to learn this skill. But I was also the type of folks, listen, the type of individual, listen, I call a thing a thing. I call a spade a spade. So I had no problem with pointing that out to individuals. So, and once again, with that, that kind of pushed me off to the side even more because, like, hey, this guy's starting trouble and so forth. Like, no, I'm just bringing it to the forefront because in the martial arts dojo is also should be a place to where you can fully express yourself and point out a right or a wrong.
How long did it take you to find a home where that was not the issue, or did it take for you to strike out on and create your own gym or build your own gym for
No,
that?
I think as time progressed, right, um, that went away because they started to see the value of us working. Like we were one team, right? So whether you were black, white, Brazilian, whatever, okay, we work as one team. If one of us win, all of us win. So when that mindset went away from folks about okay, us against them, then okay, the barrier started to come down.
Okay. Um, your former military and former law enforcement.
No, not former
Oh,
military, former
okay.
law enforcement. Yeah, I did corrections for like 6.5 years.
Okay. How much of those discipline, the BJJ discipline, helped you in that work environment?
Oh man, so much. And in fact, so much to where, I was the main officer that was called to the floor when there was a unruly or an inmate that had to be restrained.
Okay.
Uh, they knew my background. It's like, okay, I had to be on the scene. And it's funny you should mention that because this facility that I was working at, we were holding one of the most notorious criminals. He was responsible for several murders and of judges and attorneys, Brian Nichols.
Oh,
And I had to
okay.
be a part of the escort team.
Oh God.
Yes, and I didn't want to be a part of it, but the captain of that time said, "Listen, I need Al-Kush on there. If you're not on there, I'm gonna write you up. You need to be down there to escort him to the transport so we can take him to court." So it was like I had to be on there because he knew my background and he knew I could hold my own. And it was kind of like a blessing and a curse because every time I turn around, I was calling to respond to unruly inmates and so on and so forth.
Okay. I know a few COs, and they've had war stories where they took off the holster and gave an inmate a fair 101. You don't have to, but was that part of your experience at any point?
No, I
Okay.
knew better. I mean, that's an instant write up, you know. And
Okay.
you don't disarm, even though you can handle your own without all of the things that we have on our person.
Yeah.
That was just you just didn't do that. You didn't disarm yourself to go fist the cuffs, with the inmate.
Okay.
That just you just didn't do that. And it was about a matter of control, self restraint.
Hmm.
And as an officer, you're supposed to have that, in which I don't see that a lot now. So you have a lot of fatalities that's taking place that's really unnecessary, simply because the officer didn't have self-restraint and self-control. And I think that martial arts, specifically Brazilian jiu-jitsu, should teach you how to restrain it, because you know what you're capable of.
Okay.
So why take it there, right? Why take it there? So then we don't we learn how to use what I call verbal judo. So verbal judo is when you use a person which there may be saying awful things about you, about your family, and so forth. Just take it and you just redirect that energy,
Okay.
and you just let it bounce off you. But you don't engage in that type of thing. You know, the few times that I did had to use my skill, it was fairly quick.
Okay.
It's fairly quick. And I should just say that it was over within a matter of minutes, and the inmate was for the most part wasn't seriously harmed, but he did have to seek medical attention.
Okay. Enough said. Um, I remember when I first seen Hoist Gracie, that first UFC, and he just decimated everybody. Um, we go back to the philosophy of Bruce Lee and how martial arts has evolved. Why has BJJ still be able to become relevant and basically be one of the groundwork for any MMA fighter since those early UFC days? What about the aspect of it? Because people, I get it. People are biased towards their martial arts. Muay Thai is going to Muay Thai for life. Karate and Taekwondo, Joe Rogan for life. But why is it that's BJJ has not been phased out, has not been altered, watered down to a certain extent? The ground principles are still the same, still effective. Why BJJ over everybody else? As far as if you're trying to build an MMA fighter or just get basic self defense techniques down.
It's simply because you can be a smaller person and you can subdue somebody that's much stronger, much bigger than you. All right, if you're able to take them down to the ground. Okay. Um, I've always been a smaller person, right? And when I first started Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, just about everybody in the dojo was bigger than me. I was 150 pounds, soaking wet, right? Couldn't gain any weight. And those guys was like, back then, they was like 200, 215, 230. Everybody was big, you know? But in developing my skill and learning Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, it didn't matter how big and strong you were. It's about the application of the technique. So you can see how you can nullify somebody that could like bench press 350 pounds.
Mm.
But if I get on top of you, you can't get me off you, even though you can bench press 350 pounds and I'm only 150 pounds. It's because of the application of the technique. So I think that is the reason why Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is still relevant, right? And I think that's the reason why it has had so much success, especially in cage fighting, right? So you get the guy to the ground, right? You have to know how to subdue them and to keep them there, right? The danger comes in when you're up on your feet. So now we're throwing strikes, we're throwing punches, kicks, knees, elbows. But once you take the person down, it's very difficult to throw a knee from the ground. It's very difficult to throw a roundhouse from the ground, if not impossible, right? So it takes away all of that, and the person who is skilled on the ground, 9 times out of 10 is going to be the victor of the fight.
Okay, hypothetically speaking, would you agree that BJJ should implement some type of striking to kind of, instead of just trying to wait for your shot to get him on the ground? Because if that's, I get why, but you've been in street fights, I've been in a bunch of fights. Waiting, I have a wrestling background, so me is just like I'm just waiting to so I can get my just I can take him down and get him when I get him on the ground. But if I get hit a couple times striking, it's like ah. So
Right.
do you think that needs to be implemented to a certain degree to kind of give the practitioner a better chance, more so
Right.
standing up?
Yes. So let's take it back, right? So what is the origin of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? The origin of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is Jiu-Jitsu, or what we call traditional Jiu-Jitsu,
Hmm.
right? In traditional Jiu-Jitsu, there is striking.
Okay.
There is striking. In fact, a lot of your traditional Japanese Jiu-Jitsu schools, right? They spend very little time on the ground because the goal was is to get close enough to you to strike you, all right, to basically take away the threat of you striking them back,
Okay.
right? And the once you delivered the blow, it should be so devastating, right, that it would either maim the person, right, or blind the person. Okay, so taking it back to that, right, I think that in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right, the goal was just to get the person down,
Right.
get
Right.
close enough to get the person down. But while you're getting close enough, if you don't know how to throw that person off of their game. You don't know how to distract them with punches, whether it's kicks or elbows or some type of strike, right? You're in for a world full of trouble, all right? Because who's to say that once you go in there and you try to do a shoot or you try to just grab the person arm for an arm drag, that that person don't kick you or knee you or elbow you, right? So the strikes, I believe, should be implemented to set up the takedown. And you see that a lot in MMA fights now,
Right.
right? With a guy that has Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background. They no longer just come in and dodge the punches anymore. They throw a few, jabs, they throw a few kicks, and they get close enough so they can do their shoot, get inside, take you down, and then they can start working their ground game.
Okay. Let me ask you, what was the moment for you? You said, you know what, I need to build my own gym. What was that moment? What was the final straw, whatever, or just when did you come to that point and say, you know what, I can do this, I can teach, I'm that good? Maybe you didn't say to yourself, I'm that good, but maybe you have something in you that I can translate this to other people and be good at it.
So it was actually, I was kind of like forced into opening up my own dojo. Okay. I always knew I could do it, and I always knew I wanted to teach. Right. I always knew I wanted to teach. So I was going to like karate schools and establishing jujitsu program, Brazilian jiu-jitsu program.
Okay.
And I went to like two or three karate schools. I would establish the program, and I would notice that, well, the instructor of the karate school would notice I was having more success in members in my jujitsu program that was only established like maybe 2 days out the week or 3 days out the week
Hmm.
than they did in their entire program in which they're running a 5 day program. And so, when it got to that point, of course, it's like, okay, well, we don't want your jujitsu program in our school anymore. So they pretty much kicked me out of the school, but then they tried to keep the program there to keep the people there. So that happened to me over and over again, right?
Hmm.
And finally, my wife convinced me. She was like, listen, you need to go ahead and open up your own dojo because the same thing is going to continue to happen over and over again. People don't really appreciate you, for your talent and your art. They see how they can basically take from you and not give back, right? So that's what kind of forced me to open up Team Mongoose BJJ. And I did that 10 years ago, and we've been successful ever since.
What were some of your immediate challenges in opening your own dojo? Did Was the community embracing? Did you get hate from other dojos per se? Like I'm thinking Karate Kid at this point, but what issues did you have in the beginning and the on the onset?
So, in the world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you have what we call, franchise schools or major schools and so forth, right?
Okay.
So, I'm the small guy on the block. So all of the big name school, but I come from a big name school, you know. Um, you know, not everybody was happy with me doing that. Not everybody was happy with me doing my own thing. And you know, I didn't know it was like that until I got into it and I started teaching and I started to see a little bit of hate. Like, yo, what's the deal? I thought, we all supposed to be working together because to spread jujitsu, spread
Right.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? But what it was just a thing of like, well, you think you're special when you need to be a part of the group. And it's like, I am part of the group. I'm a part of the international group of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I just had a bigger mindset than just staying, okay, I want to stay here just because all of the brothers and sisters I came up through the ranks are here. I want to spread and I want to do it my way. Okay. Not to say that my professor's way was wrong, but each and every one of us bring a certain talent to the gift that we're given,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I saw that. I saw my talent, right? And I wanted to spread it in my way. But I couldn't do that as long as I was underneath the direct tutelage of my instructor. So I had to kind of break out and do my own thing.
Let's shift gears. We were talking offline, and as global as martial arts is, BJJ especially, it seems like Black Americans are still not being funneled into it like they should be. I think the average person probably knows who John Jones is, but they can only name you one, or maybe Francis Ngannou. Um, why is it that we have not gravitated towards it? I saw more traction in the early '80s, uh, us getting into it. Now, not so much. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, the whole thing of being pushed, I believe, is the knockout arts, right? A lot of us we don't like the close contact
Right.
because let's
Okay.
face it, in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you're close, you're up on each other, you're sweating, you're gonna have another man's sweat on you, another woman's sweat on you, and it's a grimy art. So a lot of us is like, no, I would rather just deal with the striking arts to keep you at distance, right?
Hmm.
But you and I both know that, there's a small percentage of your fights are won just standing
Just
up,
yeah,
right? 90% of your fights are going to be won
on the
once they go
ground.
to the ground,
That's
right?
right.
It's going to 90% of your fights are going to go to the ground. So you're talking about 10% margin, right? 10% has that skill of just knocking somebody out on their feet. Okay. So I believe with us African Americans, we still in love with the idea, hey man, I can knock you out on the standing up, one punch knockout. And really this just fantasize. That's not reality. Because you throw that punch and you miss, and somebody that's skilled in wrestling, jujitsu, even judo, right? Once they take you down, you're like a fish out of water, you know? Um, but to encourage us to join more Brazilian Jiu Jitsu dojos and to learn the art of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, I would tell them to look at it like this. Okay, since we know the numbers now, right? Wouldn't you want to be better equipped to survive an encounter that 90% of the time you're going to actually be on the floor or on the ground,
Hmm.
right? So let's better equip ourselves. Let's learn how to develop these skills. So God forbid it should happen to where we get attacked on the street and we get taken down on the ground. We can survive that incident and be able to live and tell about it to our children and our grandchildren.
Okay. Does does UFC, MMA, Bellator, Strike One do they do a proper job of showing what a possible actual fight would look like? Because Kimbo Slice is I love to throw Kimbo Slice in everybody's faces. When fat white dude Bob Country Nelson got a hold of
Right,
Kimbo, put him in the crucifix, all that infamous for knocking me, but get him in a situation where it's lights out. That's what happens 9 times out of 10. But
right.
I guess I'm asking from what people see of martial arts, this is the UFC. Is that a realistic? Is that showing what could possibly happen in a fight per se with rules?
Yeah. So when we talk about a real fight, right? A real fight involves no referees. It's
Right.
not a controlled environment. Okay. So I know when I was a kid, my mom told me, listen, if anybody bother you, whatever, you pick up the nearest thing that you can find and you knock them across the head with it, right? You know,
Yeah.
that's a real fight. There's no referee. There's no rule, right? It's eye gouging. There's biting. There's all this other stuff, right? But so let's take away all of that, right? So let's take. I don't have a stick or a brick to grab, right? And we're just fighting on the lawn, right? Uh, if the person takes you down and you don't have any type of ground experience, yeah, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna lose the fight. Okay, if you can't grab a stick, you can't grab a brick. There's nothing for you, and you don't have any weapons on you. And it's just a good old fist of cuffs. And that person takes you down, and you're out of your element on the ground. Yes, you're going to lose. And depending on how far the person want to take it, you're going to lose badly. You can wind up in the hospital. You know.
Well, let
So
me
let's
ask
hope
you:
there be.
do we have
Yeah.
some weird code of honor when it comes to fighting? And once again, I'm gonna use Kimbo again as an example. He fought the Boston cop, the cop from Boston, and the cop from Boston used some MMA moves, some wrestling, some grappling, choked him out. And at the end of the fight, people were like, "Well, he cheated because it wasn't a stand up. He wasn't." And I was like, "It's a fight."
It's
So
a fight.
yeah. So do we suffer from this weird code? Like, no, it's got to be mano y mano. This is how.
Right, right,
What's it
right.
going to take for us to get out of that mindset when it comes to self defense
Yeah.
on that level?
So when it comes to self-defense, all the things that I had pointed out earlier, right? Everything goes. There's no rule in self-defense, okay? Because the main objective is to survive the encounter, all right? To be able to talk about your encounter because you survived it, okay?
Right.
So that means, look, if I have to bite you to get away from you, I'm gonna bite you, right? If I gotta poke you in your eye, I'm gonna poke you in your eye. You know, whatever I gotta do. If I gotta pull your ears, whatever, I'm gonna do whatever I gotta do to survive the encounter.
Right.
Okay. So there is no code of conduct when we talk about fighting in the street. All right. Now, when you talk about a sport like MMA, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, Judo, there are rules involved to keep the athlete safe, all right, and to keep them from encountering seriously bodily harm.
Hmm.
Okay, and those rules are in place, and also to establish good sportsmanship because I don't see a lot of that right now, even though those rules are in place for that. You see poor sportsmanship because one of the things that are not being established in the dojos now is teaching the student about their moral responsibility, right?
Right.
Ethical principles, right? And code of conduct, what we call the Bushido code, the warrior code.
Warrior code. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not being taught in a lot of dojos right now. So you will see when somebody, wins a fight in a controlled environment, they're very braggadocious, they're gloating over their opponent and so forth. And that just makes the sport look bad. All right. It makes the sport look bad. It makes the competitor or the athlete looks bad, and it makes their coaches look bad too. Because as a coach or a professor, your student should know better.
Hmm.
They should know better, right? Because that will discourage the person that they defeated from continuing the journey of jujitsu or whatever sport that they're in. Simply because, okay, I got defeated and this guy just gloated over me. He just made a whole scene of the whole thing. So I don't want to compete anymore. I don't want to do this art anymore. And we don't want that. We don't want that in jujitsu. We don't want that in judo. We don't want that in wrestling. We want to compete, but we want to compete with good sportsmanship to build each other up, not to tear each other down.
I want to ask you, Ghee versus NoGhee. What are your thoughts on it? Your preferences. Um, I don't know. Maybe I'm outside looking in. It seems like NoGhee has a spike in popularity. Maybe I could be wrong, but can you just explain it to me in your way? What Ghee versus NoGhee and the pros and cons of each.
Well, you should learn both.
Okay.
Okay, you should learn both. But my point of view is that the gi you should learn gi first, right,
Okay.
or the traditional kimono, right? and why? Question is, well, why? Why is Ghee so important? Because like you say, NoGhee is the popularity is growing and everything. Everybody seems to want to do NoGhee.
Right.
Ghee should be learned first because, in my opinion, it's more practical. All right. No gi, you have guys with shorts on. Some have a rash guard. Some have their topless, right? Just bare chest, right? What are the places to where you're going to get into a confrontation where a guy's wearing shorts, okay, and bare chest, right? I can tell you, on the beach
On the beach, right?
or the pool side,
You're
right?
right. Yeah.
And how many of us is trying to get into it? We're relaxing, we're chilling,
Right.
right? We're not
Yeah.
trying to get into. We're enjoying ourselves on the beach and pool side,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's look at the gi. The gi represents all the different ways you can manipulate someone's clothing to subdue them. Let's go through the seasons. Okay, you have winter, right? You're wearing a heavy jacket, coat. That coat can be used just like the top of a kimono, right? You can throw a person with the coat, you can choke them out with the coat, a jacket, a sweater. All of these things that we wear to cover up to keep ourselves warm
Mm-hmm.
can be used to subdue an aggressor or opponent or an assailant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, same thing. You have fall. We're still wearing clothing. Okay, you got you got all of these seasons. You go through the 4 seasons. You're still wearing clothing. The only season where you don't wear a lot of clothing is the summertime. Right. So my take on it is that you should definitely learn both, but you should prioritize Ghee first. And if you reflect on all of your great champions, they all started out with the Ghee on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it wasn't until they got very proficient with the Ghee that they took the Ghee off and then they started competing in submission wrestling and no Ghee competition.
I want to ask you. We have a problem with the black male youth. Um, People's first instinct is to always put them in sports as a way to kind of harness their energy. I've always thought martial arts was the better option. I want to get your thoughts on that. If I'm missing the point, if I'm wrong on that.
No, absolutely. In fact, because at my dojo, right, our dojo is not like any other dojo. And I know people say that all the time and it sounds cliche-ish, right? But here at Team Mongoose BJJ, right, we work to establish, okay, the code of conduct of the warrior, the Bushido code. So, prime example, every single one of my students that walk through the door, especially with the youth, right, they have to speak when they enter into the building.
Okay.
If you don't speak when you walk through that door, I would tell you to exit the door and come back in and say hello to everyone. You say hello, good afternoon, good evening, but you have to speak to everybody that's present because you're entering into a place, everybody else is here.
Mm-hmm.
The least you could do is give courtesy and say hello, right? That's not established in most dojos. You can walk through the door and don't say anything. You walk through the door, start putting on your uniform and everything, and just step on the mat. They can't even get on the mat without asking for permission.
Okay.
So what that does, right? It teaches the youth, all right? It teaches the youth 2 things. In order to get respect, you have to give respect, okay? And you have to learn, okay, how to conduct yourself in certain settings, right? You have to be able to operate and function, all right, no matter what setting you in with a certain uh, code of principle. And that's why I think that in a lot of your gyms and dojos, that's what's missing. That's the missing link. They're not teaching the moral code of martial arts. They're just teaching, okay, I want to make you the best uh, karate practitioner, the best Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner as possible, and they're leaving out major things that will help to build the character of the student. So I'm all about building character of my students, whether it's the youth or whether it's the adult. Because let's face it, you have some adults, right, that their character is shady. but it's only because, right, it was neglected as a child.
Okay.
It was neglected as a child. So here at Team Mongoose BJJ, we're all about character. We're all about building a good character because I tell all of my students, I'm not interested in creating great athletes. I'm not interested in creating great fighters. I'm interested in creating great martial artists and great people.
Okay, I'm glad you said that because most dojos, the goal is to turn out world champs. That's what brings in the money, the new bodies. How do you balance that? You know, okay, so I get what you're saying. The goal is not world champs.
Right.
But how do you walk that tightrope of not wanting to say, I see a progeny right there. I see something. He could be the next John Jones. But how do you keep yourself from not going down that path? Because I think that's one of the dark paths of martial arts is focusing on the next Khabib or the next Conor. How do you avoid that? And how do you refrain from pushing the kid that to be like, this is going to be our first world champion? You just watch him. How do you walk that,
Right.
walk that line?
Now listen, the kid may want to take it to that level,
Okay.
and that's fine. But as a instructor and a professor, it's my responsibility to let the child know this is not what it's all about.
Okay.
Okay. If you do that, hey, that's great. We're all happy for you and we support you fully. Okay. But that shouldn't be the end. That shouldn't be the all of all. Right. And I give examples.
Okay.
I give examples of great champions, but when you look at their life outside of the ring or outside of the match, they were despicable people.
Mm-hmm.
And I point to them as an example with my students. And I say, now, do you want to be like this person? And win all the gold medals, get all of the accolades, but then nobody wants to really be around them because they're known as a despicable person. Yeah, they won all these fights and everything, but they're lewd in conduct, and they have all kind of issues because they don't have any self-restraint. They didn't keep to the code of conduct of martial arts. Or do you want to be like this champion over here, that he or she was able to rise to the top, win all of the championships, and yet and still they remain humble. They give back to the community. Everybody loves them. They get invitations all over the world to come and visit various different dojos. And of course, the child opts, oh no, I want to be like that champion. Okay, so if you want to be like that champion, you have to do this. You have to hold to this code. You have to hold to this code of conduct, right? You have to be courteous, even though you're winning all the championships and the tournaments and stuff. All right. When it comes to another child that you defeat and stuff, raise that child hand at the end of the match. Tell them how good that they did against you. Tell them how they gave you some difficulty in certain aspects of the match.
Okay.
Don't tear that child all the way down. Right. And they understand, right? They understand that it's much more than about winning the gold medal or the belt, you know. And that warms my heart when they get it.
Okay, two-pronged question. What champions do you use as a cautionary tale to your students? And what would you do with a student that wants to go down the dark path of being a champion?
All right. So you ever heard of the War Machine?
Yeah. Oh my God. I've met him a few times. Oh God. Oh God. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a great
He's
example.
everything that
Don't
yes.
go down this path, right?
He's yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll use that person as an example, right?
Yes.
Like this,
Yeah.
you don't want to go down this path. This is not a good path to go down, right? And I use one of my idols, Muhammad Ali,
Okay.
as a champion. Like Muhammad Ali is loved, all over the world now, and I point that out too. Now he's loved, okay. But when he was in his prime, he was hated because he stood up, okay, for something that he believed in. And I tell my students the same thing. When you know that you're right and you believe to your heart, don't let someone change your mind, especially when you know that you're on the right path. Okay. So yeah, those are the two examples I use often.
Let me ask you, what do you think of champions that are not humble? Floyd, Connor, um, you know, what do you take away from that?
Um, I take away that at some point in their early development as children, uh, they're acting that out as adults.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I take from that. It's like when you see, a champion being braggadocious, I got this and I got that and so forth, right? Especially, being African American black man. A lot of us came from broken homes. We didn't have a lot of stuff, we didn't know a lot of us. We didn't know where our next meal was coming from.
Hmm.
So all of a sudden, that we become adults and we have all this money, we can get anything we want, and instead of being humble and say, man, I came from humble beginnings and now I'm here, and I want to tell everybody how you can get this too. Just be humble and work hard. They flip the other way around,
Okay.
you know. But I think that every one of them, man, if you go back into their childhood, you can see that it was something that caused them to, like you say, go to that dark side, you know. And you might have heard this before. It's like, the difference between the villain and the hero is very thin,
Yeah.
right? It's very thin. It's a thin line, right? Uh, that hero makes the right choice, right? It makes the right choice to be a hero for not just him or herself, but for everyone.
Everybody. Right. Right. Uh, okay. Maybe this is an unfair question. You take a kid off the street. He's rough around the edges. How long under your tutelage does it take for you to see a change in him?
So every kid is different, right?
Right.
And it's gonna deal a lot with the environment that they came from, as far as in the household. Like, does he have, is does he have both parents there? Does he have any parent there?
Okay.
He could be coming from a foster like household and so forth, right? So all of that is going to determine how much time it's going to take for me to develop that child, okay? Because you got to deal with neglect and abuse, okay? And those are barriers that the child will put up naturally,
Mm.
right? So as a good professor, all right, and a good instructor, I have to figure out how to get through those barriers, or at least break those barriers down. So every child is different. So I can't give a specific time. All right, well, it takes me this amount of time, and the child will revert. Or
Right.
the child will, convert into a new child. It doesn't work like that. Every child's circumstances are different, so that's going to determine the amount of time. But I will say, if aided with the help of community. So it's not just me. You heard the old African proverb: "It takes a village
To raise
to
a
raise
child.
a child."
Yep. Hmm.
Right? With the aid of the community, saying, "Listen, little Joey, man, we see you going to jujitsu, and I've seen a change in you. Right? You're doing so much better now. You even look happier now.
Okay.
Believe it or not, that actually encourages the child to continue to press forward and to have a better attitude and perspective on life, versus Joey, his buddies around the block. Oh, you doing that karate stuff? You doing that jujitsu stuff? Man, please, that's for suckers.
Yeah.
That's for whatever, right? We've all encountered that. We're not
Yes.
us all, but this is where I'm coming from. When a child has that type of encouragement from the community and people that's active and see the child
Hmm.
trying to do better for themselves, and they see their instructors trying to help the child, that all makes the journey a little bit easier, and it also make them progress a lot more faster.
Gotcha. Final question before I let you go. Have you ever had pushback from the parents or a parent in regards
Oh,
to your teaching style or what you're trying to do for them?
absolutely, I get it all the time, and almost like weekly.
Really?
Yes, yes, because we have certain parents that listen. I'm old school, right? And I know a lot of folks don't agree with this, but look, when I came up, right, I got spankings. I got spankings, and it wasn't like it's a difference between spankings and beatings,
Yeah.
right? I got spanking, and those spankings taught me, hey, listen, you don't do that. You don't do certain things. You don't say certain things. You don't go. You don't question, your parent, right? Or those people that are over you that means good by you, right?
Hmm.
There's also such thing as tough love. Tough love means that listen, I know it's going to be difficult for you, right? But I know it's also the best thing for you
Right.
because you're not going to be a child forever. And at some point in time, right, you have to grow up and become an adult, and you're going to, God willing, be able to have children of your own, and you're going to pass these tenets on to them. Okay. So I'll give a quick example. I see a lot of children that they don't want to try now. They don't even want to try. I had this one little boy. He was at the age of, I believe he was 10 or 11 years old. Never rode a bicycle.
Oh.
Never rode a bicycle. So I asked. I said, "Well, why didn't you ride? Why haven't you ever rode?" And it said because he didn't want to try because he was afraid of falling. And I looked at the parent and I said, you was okay with that?" They were okay with it. And I said, listen, it's okay to fall down. It's okay to fail. Failure is a part of your success,
Hmm.
right? So this little boy, 10 years old, he never rode a bicycle because he allowed his fear to intervene with his development of skills and take control to where he wouldn't even try because he saw other kids that was falling off the bike. So here at my dojo, I said, listen, you got to at least try. I don't care. And I tell the parents, I said, now I know it's difficult for you to watch. And if it's going to be that difficult, you might want to step outside. Okay. But they're going to try here at Team Mongoose. They're going to be forced to try. And after they try, some of them get it the first time around. Some of them, it takes 3 or 4 times or 5 or 6 attempts before they get it. But at the end, when they achieve their goal, they feel so much better.
Mm.
And I always go back to them. I say, now see, you wasn't even willing to try it first. Now that you're trying, I need you to do that with everything. Everything that poses a challenge to you. I need you to try. Okay, at least try. But with the parents, the kickback of the parents, they don't want to see their child encounter difficulty, right? And that's not real life. There's going to be difficult things, as you grow up, all throughout childhood and adulthood. So for you to say, "Oh no, I don't want to do this because it's difficult," that's not being realistic. And for the parents, my advice to the parents is like, listen, allow your child to go through difficulty now so that they can better cope with it as adults, and their whole world is not destroyed when they encounter resistance and some difficulty. Okay. So yes, I do get that often. I get, the parents like, well, he or she didn't want to do it, and you made them do it and everything. I said, but yeah, but how do they feel about it now? Oh, they love it now. Okay, so
What's the problem?
what's the problem?
What are we talking? Class is in session, Professor Maajid Al-Kush. I know you got an engagement to do, so I got to bring you back for part 2 to this. Please shout yourself out. Where can everybody find you and your dojo at?
All right, so we're right here in Lawrenceville, Georgia. Okay, we are the intersection of Old Norcross and Cruz Road. You can contact us on mongoosejujitsu.com. That's our website. Or you can do teammongoosebjj@gmail.com. All right. We're always opening for new members. Okay. You guys are more than welcome. Come in and get you a free trial class. I guarantee you, once you walk through those doors, you don't want to leave.
Sir, I appreciate your time. Like I said, you got to come back for part 2, 3, 4, and 5. So
Absolutely, absolutely.
definitely. So I thank you for coming through. Thank you for the gems and all that. Just thank you. So I definitely look forward to having you back again. So I don't want to keep you from your appointment. So yes, thank you for coming through, Professor.
Oops.
All right, all right, all right. Hopefully, I got some out of that. I fucks with it. I fucks with them. So please go support Team Mongoose. I'm gonna get out of here. I got stuff to do. I may come back later on today. Probably not, but you never know. So y'all have a good one. Peace.